Oh my God. There's usually more of that sensor. It's about half missing. Oh man. Woo. Don't let your brakes get rusty. What is up, everyone? We are going Jeeping tomorrow, and it's far enough away and it's cold enough that I'm gonna tow it, so I need the van. And usually in my van videos, you get a little bit of Jeeping in there, and this one you won't, because I just want to talk about what I'm about to do, which is my brakes. I did something that was very taxing on my van the other day. More than what most people would do in normal situations, even off-roading. And the condition of my brakes resulted in, well, now my brake pad light, I guess, is on, which means the little sensor that's in your pads that senses how close your pad is getting to the rotor, aka wearing out, is too close. So before it starts squeaking or anything like that, it's time to service my brakes. So I'm gonna pull it in, we're gonna start tearing this thing apart. I can tell you why this happened in the first place and why I wasn't really surprised. And then I also want to talk about brake upgrades and, you know, what I think about them in these vans. And yeah, so let's get this thing inside. All right, so before I get started, first of all, what was wrong with my brakes to begin with? Like I said before, there was kind of already something up with them. And I have to say, given everything I've been doing with it, I think it was pretty irresponsible of me to be driving around with my brakes in the condition they were in. But unfortunately, lot rot, which is what was wrong with them, is probably a realistic issue that most my van customers will have to face. So let me show you what lot rot is, what effect it has on the brakes, and you know, what to look out for, I guess. As far as I've learned, there's really nothing to prevent it except for just driving your vehicle, but unfortunately with these RV style vans, it's not always an option. But let's check it out. So what lot rot is it starts with the rotor getting a little surface rust on it, and then when you go and drive it, the pads will squeeze the rotor when you hit the brakes. It'll knock all that rust off, but it doesn't do it perfectly evenly, and it makes the surface of the pad uneven, so it's not applying pressure across the surface of the rotor evenly. And then over time, what you get, like, the whole rotor should be that shiny. It's a little bit there, a little bit there, and of course it's squeezing the rust here a little bit, but it's never going to have the same power ever again. It's gonna squeak, it's gonna wear the pads out faster than normal. And what happened was we were filming a video where I was in a very slippery situation, and what the ABS does is it counteracts your differential. So on an open differential, if that tire over there has traction and this one doesn't, this tire is going to spin. That's just how an open differential works. That's why people buy lockers. But what Mercedes does is it applies the brakes to the wheel that's free spinning, the wheel that doesn't have traction, so that the wheel that has traction has power. In a slow trail riding, peaceful environment, it's actually a pretty good design. You cannot hate on them for that. However, my van was probably seeing wheel speeds upwards of 40 miles an hour in the situation I was in, and the brakes were trying to slow down the wheel that did not have traction, which was this one. And as you can see, well, I don't know if you can see it, but you can see the outer pad has a little bit of life and the inner pad is completely gone. Unfortunately, that's a characteristic of lot rot. So I've checked on these periodically since I've had the van, knowing that it had a little bit of lot rot, because what can happen is it like chips away at the pad, and then all of a sudden under a traumatic situation, the pad can just disintegrate, which is what happened. So these brakes, when I bought the van, what happened was they saw the lot rot. It was a Mercedes dealership, you know, so they're not going to sell me anything but a nice functioning vehicle. I told them they wanted $2,000, so to help with the cost, I was like, don't worry about the brakes. They had good pad life, had a little bit of lot rot. I was like, don't worry about it. And they actually worked pretty good. So I kept checking on them every time we towed or anything. I made sure we had good pad life, and you know, I didn't smell any burning brakes or anything like that, and everything was fine. It didn't show any signs of failure. And the funny thing is you notice these are drilled and slotted rotors. I usually won't put those on an OEM application, right? But even under these conditions, these brakes have been amazing. And what these brakes are is, well, you can't see it there, but they're actually powerstop brakes, which is like an OEM upgrade. So it's drilled and slotted rotors and like a really nice composite pad. And I don't know, they worked great in this condition. So I can only imagine what they're gonna be like when they're fresh. So I ordered another set of that stuff, rear pads, rear rotors, and I'm gonna install them. We're gonna tow with this thing tomorrow. I'm sure it's gonna be amazing. Yeah, so I'm gonna get to working on this, and I'll do like a overlap video and talk about probably why I don't like other brake upgrades. All right, so before we get started, this is one of the best upgrades a Sprinter van can get. This is the Agile Off-Road 16 millimeter wheel spacer kit. And aside from it being a spacer and making my van look cooler and it being wider and making it feel a little bit better, at the very least, it converts what is factory, which is normally a bolt that goes into this hole, to this stud and a normal lug nut. So when you're on the side of the road and there's studs hanging off of this, and there's 10 feet of snow around you and there's cars flying by and you're trying to get your tire up on here, it'll just slide onto these studs. You throw the nuts on and you go and get to safety. If you have the bolts, even in this scenario where it's on a lift, I have everything's stable, it's still sketchy, a pain, and I've taken years off my back just putting Sprinter tires on with those lug bolts. So get yourself a set of wheel spacers that keep the hub centric, you know, lip on there and convert it to studs just like this one. I've sold so many of these. Agile is fantastic and it's a great product. So, brake upgrades. So you already know what can go wrong with your stock brakes, right? So, and especially depending on how you use your van, you may be prone to what I'm in as far as the situation goes right now. So, number one option, just replace it with stock brakes, right? Well, not everyone wants to do that, and I understand why they don't want to do that. People want increased braking power and stuff like that. But let me tell you something about the OEM brakes on this thing. These brakes were engineered and designed by Mercedes to hold up to, you know, commercial use. And what do I mean by commercial use? What I mean by that is when your FedEx driver drops off your package and they're talking on the phone and you know, they head back to the truck and you hear them take their foot and just put it straight to the floor and blast off to their next location. Mercedes knew when they were making this van that it was going to be a commercial vehicle with employees driving it. Now that's an easy situation that I just described to you. Far worse than that situation is you know, plumbers. So say a plumber owns this van. Plumbers' tools and materials weigh so much, and same deal, they don't care, company vehicle, you know, it's got nothing to do with them. They just got to get to and from the job site as fast as possible. So this thing could be overloaded, like literally against the law overloaded, and they're going to drive the same way that FedEx employee does. They are going to mash their foot on the accelerator pedal, and then they're going to mash their foot on the brakes when it's time to stop. So Mercedes designed these brakes to hold up to that abuse, hold up to it for a long time, work well, and work for a while. I have seen vans, Chevys, Toyotas with OEM brakes and 120,000 miles on them. There's a lot of good engineering that goes into OEM brakes from many manufacturers, and I think that they're worthy of more than what most people think. So I think the number one upgrade for any vehicle is OEM brakes. Nice OEM brakes from the dealer. So you can see here where the sensor, you know, my pads are all still there and it's safe and everything, but this sensor, if you look real close, there's a piece of metal in there, a little magnet, and the rust started knocking away at it, and the sensor goes, "Oh, I am way too close to making conductivity of this sensor. You need to replace these things." So that's on the outside pad, unfortunately. So the inside pad, they're actually moving freely, which is cool. Oh, the inside pad is not safe. We are down to the metal. That is not good. That is not good. So, you know, if you have lot rot and you're driving around, I mean, I've had it for a year and a half. You know, your pad can go from, you know, if you inspect it from the outside and you see, you know, 4 or 5 millimeters, you're like, oh, I'm good. Well, under one harsh braking situation, you can lose that pad. It can just totally come apart. That's crazy. All right, let's get all right, so not OEM upgrades. So the brake upgrades that are up there come down to like 2 or 3 things, right? They come down to a bigger diameter, aka big brake kit, you know? So that just comes down to leverage. If it's trying to stop it out here, it's gonna be a lot easier than if it's trying to stop it all the way in here. So bigger diameter rotor, right? Obviously different composites of metal and drilled and slotted and finned and not. For example, OEM is solid. Sometimes you'll get a double layer with fins on the inside to cool it down. So size of the rotor, compound of the rotor will help with stopping power, right? And if it's not working as hard, right? And then you also upgrade this baby little caliper, what you're gonna do is prevent brake fade. So you're making it work less, you're dissipating heat, and then if you have a bigger, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 piston caliper, whatever the kit happens to be, this is a single piston, you know, it's gonna heat up the fluid less. And that's going to get rid of what we call brake fade. So if you're going down the Rocky Mountains and you get 3/4 of the way down and all of a sudden your van's not slowing down anymore, it's actually speeding up. That's because the fluid in your piston here that's coming from this hose has actually started boiling. It hit its boiling point. And not only is your brakes basically useless now, and you might be able to let them cool down and they'll work again, but once that fluid hits that point, you have to replace the brake fluid. It's no longer stable anymore. So big brake kits, I get it. I totally get it. There's a lot of benefits to it. Most of them, see how this is a rubber hose? Ah! That's the point of this hook, so you don't do that and damage your hose. This rubber hose expands and contracts a little bit when you hit the brakes. And most of these big brake kits are coming with like this solid PVC material or steel braided lines that give you a much more firm pedal. So let's talk about why I don't like the big brake kits. It's pretty obvious why you would like a big brake kit. You know, more power, less brake fade, more dependability. But most of these vans, and this is from first-hand experience, are out in the middle of nowhere all the time. That is literally their entire purpose in this world, is to take the owners out in the middle of nowhere. And when you're in the middle of nowhere, these big brake kit companies have not spent billions of dollars to make sure that if you have a failure, and you will, eventually you will, that you can just go down to the parts store and solve your issue. Now Mercedes, on the other hand, I'll go back to the C word, it's commercial vehicle. They know these vans are going to be on the job all over the world 24 hours a day. And what can a commercial vehicle not afford to do? Well, it can't afford to be down without parts. So you can depend on finding any part you need for this van as far as serviceable parts, like your brakes. Just about anywhere in the country, any time of the day, anywhere. It's nice. Now, I can't say that for some of the other parts in these things, like knock sensors that I waited 6 months for from Mercedes for my DPF. But as far as serviceable items that you're depending on heavily, no aftermarket company can match the safety of traveling the world with their product compared to the OEM brakes on a Mercedes. Now, that being said, it is the same if you do have one of these big brake kits, right? So far, none of them are intrusive enough where you can't go back to stock. So, worst case scenario is you have big brakes and, you know, a pad gets stuck in your caliper, it gets sideways, it destroys the rotor, you know, the piston comes too far out the caliper and everything's destroyed. And you got to get overnight parts from Germany, you know, for your big brake kit. Well, worst case scenario is you can put the OEM rotor back on, you can buy an OEM caliper, an OEM set of pads, and you're good. And yes, they're anywhere in the world. So basically therein lies the big deciding factor. You know, if you have a problem with your big brake kit, but the benefits outweigh the cons of having to replace all of that stuff in a pinch, then go ahead, get big brakes. You know, it's not a big deal. But as far as me and depending on this thing, I'm going all over the country with my family towing, whatever. I'm gonna run OEM style stuff as much as I possibly can, you know, just for dependability reasons and replaceability, you know. So that's why I'm giving these powerstop brakes another chance. They did well in terrible condition on my van, so I can only imagine what they're gonna do, you know, in good shape and taken care of. So one more thing that I just thought of was the aftermarket brakes that I have installed, which I think I've installed all of them that are available for Sprinters currently, don't have this sensor. So, you know, I have two thoughts on that. So you shouldn't be running full-on race car brakes on your vehicle if you don't know how to check on them once in a while. You know, so not a big deal. But reality is most people with these vans are not. They're just not people that are used to having such a high-end performance product like this. And you know, I'll be honest, most people with, you know, most normal people, they see things as complete value. So if they spend a bunch of money on something, they expect it to have value in every aspect of the item. So they think it's going to be maintenance free because it was really expensive. But that is not the case. Real race cars get taken apart every time you use them. There are sacrifices that come with performance. And I'll be honest, like I said before, I was aware of the condition of my brakes, and I have been keeping an eye on them because of that. And because that light came on, I drove this thing very sparingly home, and only to and from the shop maybe twice, because the van made me aware that that pad was at the bottom. And I think that most people really benefit from that, because this was not making any noises. It was not giving me any indication that my rear pad was that bad. It wasn't squeaking. The brake pedal still felt great. I would have, if I hadn't known and I was ignorant to it, I would just go on a trip. So I think for most van owners, you know, this sensor, you don't want to be without that. I'm not sure if anyone's going to make any developments to retain this, but currently the kits that I've installed do not have that sensor. So to sum up this video, hopefully I made it pretty quick for you guys if you're thinking about upgrading your brakes on your Sprinter van. Basically, in my opinion, OEM brakes are the best as far as durability and availability and dependability, right? So OEM is the move for most people, I think. Now, OEM upgrade like this, where it's just bolt on and everything works with the stock stuff, I think this is a good option. Just because I had great experience with those in literally their worst condition. And the van still worked good. The pedal felt good, the brakes never faded, even while towing, as many of you know that I do. So, I am not sponsored by these people, powerstop. I'm not even a dealer for them. But given my experience, I'm gonna throw another set on here. I'll let you know in a few months what I think about them. But I think this is, if you're looking for a small upgrade, this is probably the move. Better composite pads so they won't glaze over under a high heat situation. I think these might cool it a little bit, dissipate any contaminants, but we'll see on that. As far as big brakes go and big brake kits, all the ones that are out there really are great companies. Basically, my thing is that if you're willing to be in a situation where, oh no, I need parts, I'm gonna have to replace everything to deal with it. If you're cool with that, and you want the performance, and you want this firmer pedal, and you'll want the lack of brake fade and big, long grades, then get the big brake kit. But, you know, just like you would treat a race car, you're buying race car brakes. Well, now when I sell customers a big brake kit, which I do, and I still do, I sell them an extra set of pads. So they can just throw it somewhere in the van, and if they're anywhere in the country and the pad fails, at least they can just put pads in it, you know? The rotors don't fail. Calipers do fail, but, you know, they're not exactly a consumable like a pad is. So just don't get in a tight spot with the consumable, which is the pad, you know? So if you get the big brake kit, get an extra set of pads. I know it sounds crazy, but, you know, you just don't want to be stuck without them. Especially you don't have the sensor, you know, you could destroy them without knowing it, I guess. Thanks for watching this video, everyone. I appreciate it. I hope this helps some people. And enjoy your vans. And don't forget, go out and get a set of these wheel spacers. They're the best. Subscribe to the channel, please. I would really appreciate it. I want to make way more videos like this. Literally everything I do to this thing, I'd like to explain why and show you guys what I use and why I do it. Because, I don't know, I like building cool stuff. So, thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.
It's all perspective. Keep the message. Unconventional methods. Under pressure, never sweating. Stay composed. Calm, cool, and collective. Remember to breathe and never to roll. We all exit, all exit, all exit, all exit, all exit.
Check, check, Look, yo, a lot of non-believers in the field. Look at what my persistence revealed. I made strides while they stood still. Stay consistent.